ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Smokin Tabacco Show. I am Matt Tobacco from SmokinTabacco.com, and I am joined once again by my good friend, Mr. Jonathan M. Carney of Hacking Gourmet and LFD. And Smokin Nicole is not with us tonight, but we have a very special guest with us. We have Mr. Omar de Frias of Fratello Cigars. Omar, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. Been seeing a lot of really good stuff and a lot of really good content out of you guys. So I'm looking forward to the show.
Yeah, we're coming up on our first year. It's been a journey, to say the least, ever since the May Day Eve massacre that Jon and I will reference a lot. We've gone from the bottom to as close as the top as we can. We make do with what we got. We do really good. I'm doing my own producing tonight, so bear with us. I'm doing okay so far, but if it gets wacky, then we're gonna have flashbacks to May Day Eve massacre.
I'm actually kind of impressed right now. I use the program quite a bit that we use here on Omar. It's the same program that we use at the Hacking Gourmet, but it's a really different setup. Both of them are. So, and Matthew doesn't traditionally do any of this. So I'm impressed. I jumped on Facebook. It's live. All the camera angles are set up right. I mean, we're in good shape.
What are you trying to say? You didn't have faith in me? What the?
Absolutely not. I had very little faith. But my favorite thing, Omar, is the reaction of most of our guests when they pop up, and it's like, why the hell? Like for the first time, there's tons of shows out there. I know you're familiar with our show over here, and you've heard of it, but you don't have the time to sit down and watch everything with what you're doing, and so same thing with me. I don't necessarily know who's on everything. So it's one of my favorite things is when people come on the show and I'm sitting here and they're like, "What the heck's going on? Like, what's happening?" And I can always tell that nobody can get into the show because if you're into it, then and you have time to sit down and watch it. I'm right there where you get going. But we are happy to have you on here, and it's great to have you on here. So we've had a great relationship over the years. And I appreciate that, and we're looking forward to a fun night. And it was a unique situation down here because I'm down in Miami, and the time change down here, and I'll give everybody a little sneak of my view here. Not bad at all. Mm-hmm. But looking at Miami Beach. However, the time change, it's lighter out than it usually is. So I usually have a green screen behind me, and I have the same view that's behind me, but I've got some issues with my lights going on today, and the time change really screwing me up. So he's springing ahead. Got after me. But Omar, it looks like you're sitting in your backyard having a nice cigar and finally getting a chance to relax today.
Dude, it was a long day, man, too. Like, oh my God. So we're moving from a small warehouse to a much larger spot out of Nashville. So a little bit farther away from where we used to be, but we got a great deal, and it's been I cannot explain to you if I would have known how hard it was going to be to move warehouses and new systems and all the good stuff, I would have probably been more inclined into investing on it at the first time rather than having to move. But I guess it's a good thing if we're in this process of actually moving to a bigger and greater space.
So I was sitting today. I went and stopped by Meat and Bone, who is the sponsor on our gourmet sessions. I'm a partner of ours in Hacking Gourmet, and they are moving to a newer, bigger location as well. Uh-oh. Got an issue here.
What'd you do? Did you drop ash on your leg?
No, I dropped an entire lit cigar, right through my shorts. And it burned a hole through it.
A full-size hole?
Started a good-sized little one. And then...
that's the kind of content that we need, people. Say, okay, this is the kind of content that we need.
Yeah, see, now those shorts are trash.
So anyway, Meat and Bone was moved to a place, and it's like 4 times the size of what they had before.
Did you say Meat and Bone? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Meat and Bone. It's our meat purveyor. And so they're moving to a new location, and they said the same thing. They're like, this is just so much work. And they said the first thing they said, I don't know if you've had this yet, but it's like, it's so much more space. Are you ever going to fill it up? It's going to be so full, Omar. It's going to be so full, and you're going to be like, man, I wish I had more space in about 6 months.
God, I really wish so. It does, man. That's the first thing I said. It's like, God. I had 2 huge shipments coming in from La Aurora and then Joya de Nicaragua, And then all of a sudden I'm thinking, and we still hadn't moved an extra 2,000 or 3,000 boxes that we had in the, back in the warehouse. So I'm thinking to myself, this is never gonna. And then all of a sudden it starts like, pop, 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 pop. It's like, okay, I can. All right, so let's see. Let's hope. But it definitely looks much, much larger, and that's a question that definitely came up this past week.
So, Omar, you, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Let me restart that. So, you, at one point in time, I know this from talking to you and doing a little bit of homework, you worked for a wonderful organization known as NASA.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do over at NASA?
So my last job at NASA was I was managing the $5 billion budget for the Department of Science and Mission Directorate. And it's basically, we account for all the science done, not only at NASA, but also about 10% of all the science done in the world with our budget. You know what I mean? And so one of the things that we did so well was the fact that it was all about research and research organizations, period. It's what NASA does is research, right? And so a lot of people, always say, oh, well, the space shuttle isn't flying anymore. What the heck is going to happen with that? And yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, guys, have you seen any of the work that NASA's been putting out in terms of space exploration? It's not the only thing. We're talking heliophysics, astrophysics, which we're talking planetary science, we're talking Earth science, things that apply to us obviously on a daily basis. And so, it's the kind of stuff that I wish it would be talked about a little bit more, but unfortunately, it's not. So a lot of stuff going on with science though this week with the one of the main engine tests for what's going to take us back to the moon and hopefully Mars was tested at Stennis this week. So I was pretty happy to see that.
Yeah, I saw that one. That was the one where they had the engine essentially mounted so it couldn't go anywhere. And I was looking at the device that was holding it in place. You talk about what the substantial nature of what that device has to do to hold that engine physically in place is insane.
Not only the engine, but have you ever seen the crawler? A crawler is basically what you put the space. We used to put the space shuttle on top, and it would take it from vehicle, which is the vehicle assembly building where we put together the shuttle, right? And then up to the pad, right? The we call them cadenas, which is one of those what moves the wheel. It's you've seen those things that basically turn around and has multiple balls, right? And then one single nucleus in the middle, and it just turns around, and it helps all of the other components sort of move, right? SKF is one of the main people that produce that. It's one of those balls that just makes that thing go around. Is basically the size of a car. That should just put it in perspective right then and there. We're talking this thing is obviously massive, right? So take into consideration the amount of thrust that had to come out of that engine, right? So that all of the other components that are surrounding it are just staying in place and not literally just skyrocketing, right? So they say that only two people can make it rain in this world, and it's God and NASA, because the amount of water that is needed to basically keep that engine cold, it's ridiculous. We're talking in the multi-millions of gallons just to keep that bad boy. That's why you saw so much vapor going out. It goes all the way up, and then all of a sudden, starts raining in Stannis Space Center.
Wow. Yeah, it's always been impressive
stuff,
to, and like you said, science. Who doesn't love science? Science is awesome. It's like literally the way of life, I love watching the rocket launches and all these other things, that NASA going. They got the rovers on the moon, and now you get SpaceX and everything that Elon Musk is doing with his stuff over there. So it's been fun to watch.
It ain't cheap. It's not cheap, unfortunately. No. But it's everybody's doing their part to I respect the hell out of SpaceX and what they're doing, and Virgin Atlantic and obviously the best it does, but it ain't cheap.
So how long have you been smoking cigars for?
God, I was 17. I tried my first cigar, 16, 17 years old. So I'm unfortunately 42 years of age, which By the way, I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed my 30s, okay? Now looking back, I enjoyed the hell out of my 30s. So, but there was one constant. In my 30s, it was like only one job I had to do. All I had to do was go to NASA, Monday through Friday, and then just do that, right? Once I started in the cigar industry, everything started going downhill, right? So they say that there's a progression of the salesperson in the cigar industry, except for Carney. That does not happen to him. He just gets stronger and stronger, right? But the more you advance, right, you start out very thin, very, looking super good. All of a sudden you get a promotion, boom, beer belly comes out. All of a sudden you get more promotions, the beer belly, and then the wheels in the back goes out. And then all of a sudden you're like, 15 years in, you're the director of sales for a big corporation, and you're just like flat following your sales through the entire process. The evolution of a salesperson.
John, is this true? Can you speak to this too?
It's for me. It's all about the angles, Omar. Like, I keep the angles nice, the close. Coincidentally, I'm 60 pounds heavier than I was when I started with LFD 10 years ago. Now, some of it's different. It's in different areas. I haven't not been able to lift the last one because I had an injury, an upper body injury that I haven't been able to lift, but I'm getting back into it. But yeah, fortunately, it's been somewhat proportional. But I'll tell you, before I started really actively getting into it, back into the gym, because I was an athlete, as you were too.
Right.
It was a good 4 or 5 years that I kind of like, So I'd say about 6 years ago, it wasn't clean. It was a sloppy transition. It's just because you're out busting your ass on the road, and you're not thinking anything of it. And when you're young, it's real easy to just work harder. Instead of just smarter, you're working smart, but you're also working really hard because you can outwork people physically. You could be up till 2 a.m, and be up at 6 and be back on the road doing something. So that's gone for me. But yeah, it's entirely accurate. I mean, you could look at
you can look into this industry and start seeing what's going on, right?
Yeah, come to a trade show and you know exactly what's going on with every person that's there.
One of my best friends was a traveling salesman, and was kind of in the top of his field where he was and what he was doing, and through the second half of his 20s, I mean, he banged through that and was every night, it was work, event, late night, next city travel, and the whole circuit. Then he got into his 30s, and that's when he was like, I can't do this anymore. And I think all the years of just the constantly being on the road and all that whole lifestyle, I think, and I never did it, so this is just me on the outside looking in, but I think that it's like fun for a while, and then you kind of get to a point where you kind of like, I can't do it anymore, and you start to, he kind of like got out of shape and all that too, so he was like, I got to stop this, and I got to, bring this back in tighter and kind of have like a more regular schedule and job and get back into shape, and that's what he did. He also moved to Florida in the process too, so.
Yeah. But it certainly, I think you'll agree, it certainly never stops being fun. I never slowed things down or made adjustments because I wasn't having fun.
Oh yeah.
It was more of there's too much fun can be too much fun, so you just have to manage your time and manage the situation.
Too much fun.
Yeah. But Omar, you mentioned, you said you started smoking when you were 17. Do you remember the first cigar you had?
La Aurora.
Yeah.
It's actually named La Aurora, cigar out of the Dominican Republic. So the reason I remember it so well is because the guy that invited me to sort of take a look at what the process was of rolling, the bunching process, everything. They had a roller there, like a presentation going on. The guy that invited me was basically my next door neighbor / retailer, right? I used to live right next in the Dominican Republic, literally a couple blocks out of the in my street from one of the retailers in Santo Domingo. And I actually used to have his own brand as well, so Rafael. Used to be very popular back in the 90s, but then not so much after that. But he had a guy at La Aurora, and they invited me to come over because I was super interested about it. My grandpa used to go to that store all the time. And so I watched him, and I was, oh my God, I was dazzled. I could not even believe that this guy was putting, a whole bunch of dried leaves together and putting it in a beautiful cylinder format, and all of a sudden showing it to me like this, and it's just gorgeous. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing my grandpa and this guy smoking, and I'm like, oh shit, I want to do that too. But I wanted to sort of save it for a good occasion, stuff like that, and I did. This is all true, by the way. I mean, I went to Malecón, which in the capital is basically by the coast of Santo Domingo. And you can see the water. And I graduated high school, and I light up. I started smoking the cigar, and I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, so I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I probably not only cuffed along, but I still think I have some damage from that first day that I smoked that, because literally my eyes were red. But I thought I was the coolest fucking guy ever. Right? The rest of my dumbass friends were probably smoking cigarettes and doing all this. I felt like it was so important, smoking a cigar. So that's how the love started for me.
I think this is the answer to I think you said it earlier, but we have a question in the comments. It's, where is Omar from? He has the same Hispanic lingo as I do, and that's our friend Orlando Perez.
He's probably Dominican too.
He's actually a Cuban descent.
Okay.
So you're from the Dominican.
Yes.
Yeah. So Orlando, there's the answer to your question. Orlando is a regular watcher of ours we love him to death, but he likes to stir up the comments section of the show. So we have to entertain him as well. You'll notice that as the night goes on. So you've been smoking cigars for quite a long time. So obviously you have a lot of experience with that, and you were smoking cigars all through your career with NASA. At what point did you kind of get into Fratello? Where did the early days of Fratello kind of begin to form for you?
So it was very interesting for me, because I'm going to be honest, man. I had a great job. I had a great 9-to-5 job with, great benefits, and also, ability for me to telework and do other things. And, when you're in charge of something, as big as a, $5 billion budget, you know what I mean? There's also that respect that comes with that. And I came to that position at a very early age. I was the youngest GS-15 director at NASA. When they gave me that promotion, there was another kid out of Palo Alto. He was 29 years old, and he had already that GS-15 position, but as a minority, and literally, not as a minority, just as a whole, I was like the second youngest in all of NASA. So I felt really good about where my trajectory of my career was going with the agency, but I wanted more, man. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. I just wanted more. I wanted to do something a little bit more that, could be exciting, that could get me in front of people, which I love to do. That job can, as you can imagine, when you're managing dollars, right? There is an aspect of, people to people, which is, but it's unfortunately to me, not the most fun people to people, because you have to deal with a lot with Congress, you have to deal a lot with OMB, Office of Management and Budget for the President, and the bickering, this guy fighting, and this guy, all we want to do is just do good science. It got to my nerves quite a bit, and so I needed something that could get me out of that funk, but that I could still continue to believe in the agency that that it was my first job. I came out of college, I came out of my MBA, and that was all I did. And so I was able to, start Fratello as something that I felt very passionate about. I wanted to do something that I just didn't want to do, another job. I'll be honest with you. I could have probably gone into contracting just because I got so much experience in, source evaluation boards at NASA, evaluating contracts, managing contracts, writing contracts, and all these different things that I could have made, a gazillion dollars in that. But I also wanted to poke an eye out every single, 5 seconds after reviewing, another paragraph or another contract, documentation. So it was just too much. So I wanted to do something fun. That's the bottom line. And I wanted to do something that I enjoyed. And so cigars was it. So I ended up starting Fratello in 2013. I came to the trade show. Man, I remember so much from the first trade show, the people that I met, the people that I've admired, and I still admire, like the Pete Johnsons of the world, coming around and seeing my booth and saying, man, you know what? You got a badass band right there. Congratulations. And then they just walk. I'm like, oh, Jesus. You look at a guy that basically, to me, is one of those that open up so many doors for all small brands, right? they're manufactured by other people and stuff like that, but that had a vision. They connected, and people are not only continue to tell his story, but keep on growing, right?
Yeah.
To people like Jonathan Drew, 6 months later, I bump into him at an event, and he's just like, "I've been hearing some stuff about you, man," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, like that's good." And he pulls me aside and says, "You got $1 million brand, and that's it on that cigar right there." And I'm like, "What?" So you got $1 million brand. You heard it from me first. And then he leaves. And then I never see him again for like 3 years. I swear to God, the weirdest things. And at that same event, this is something that happened in Kansas. I see Matt Booth, and Matt Booth wants me to sign his ass. So, it's like the people in this industry, I think, are so incredible, right? There's so many different fields, and I'm happy to call a lot of these people my friends. And I think that's the fun part about this whole situation.
It's funny.
And I went
you mentioned
with that.
You mentioned a couple things I thought were really unique about your entry into the industry, and then I'll ask the question after. I know Matthew's got something to say too, but you mentioned something. The thing that always stood out to me about your product from the very beginning was the actual branding of the product. There's a lot of cigar brand owners. Some are, I'd say you've gone to a level higher than just being certainly higher than being just an aficionado or enthusiast or cigar retailer or a small regional brand. That's certainly growing. I consider you certainly an emerging established brand by now. But your branding was on point. The packaging was fantastic. The bands were great. But not just the quality of it, the way it looks, the way it represents, like on your shirt. Right now when you see it, I know that's Fratello. I'm having no difficulty reading it, understanding what it is. See, when your brand hit the shelves initially, it looked the part. And then my question I'll ask after Matthew is about how you got into your manufacturing side of it and where that relationship came from. But Matthew was going to say something on what we were just talking about.
Oh, I just wanted to say I thought it was really interesting how you mentioned two people who actually we've brought up or have been in conversation a few times on the show as of recently. You brought up Pete Johnson. And everything that he's done as a small brand, as he's grown and kind of opened the doors, and Matt Booth, who also was on the show a month or two ago now, and he kind of said the same thing. It was Pete Johnson was that guy for him, and when he came into the scene, and how he learned a lot from him, and that kind of gave him the motivation and whatnot to kind of get Room 101 going. So it's just funny how you kind of hear these same people, these names coming up, and we have I think it's next week we actually have Pete coming on the show. We're really excited about that. I just want to point that out. And you're right, because I think for a long time the industry was a place where it was dominated by all these big brands, and now you're starting to see a lot of the smaller boutique brands really start to, I don't want to use the word come out of the woodwork because I feel like that's kind of a derogatory term, and I don't think that it's a derogatory thing. But they've had the opportunity to make their presence known and to grow their businesses, and they're making some great cigars out there, and there's a lot more options. We had Casa Cuevas on last week, and they said, hey, we don't want to just, their biggest thing is, we don't want to take away, business from anyone else. There's a lot of good cigars out there. Obviously, there's a lot on the market now. We just want to be part of your humidor, just part of your rotation. And I think that's kind of been the same attitude that a lot of the smaller brands have had. Like, hey, I know that there's, the Fuentes, Perdomos, and Padrones of the world out there, but hey, there's a bunch of us now too. Give us a shot. And Fratello is one of them. I smoked my first Fratello, I want to say 3.5 years ago. I think it was an event you were at. You probably don't remember, but it was a few years ago. It was at Two Guys Smoke Shop, Salem. You were up there. There was you were doing an event there. That was the first time I had it, and they were great. And I was like, wow, and I was still kind of in that process of getting to know cigars at the time. I had already been smoking, but I was still, kind of learning, what was what. And so to me, it really wasn't anything. It was another brand, and I gave it a shot, like I did with most stuff. And it was good, and I considered it just as good as a lot of the other big stuff out there. So the small brand thing, I just wanted to point that out. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent about it, but
no, that's good.
The small brand thing is, I think, it's just so important, and I love highlighting that too, because I think that it's a good time for a lot of small brands right now.
Yeah.
So Omar, as I bring our friend Jonathan onto the show here,
I love it.
This is also Jonathan. So I think your first manufacturing partnership was with Hoya de Nicaragua in Nicaragua, correct?
Yep.
And now you mentioned now you have something going with La Aurora, which was probably stemmed from you're Dominican. Why don't you have a Dominican cigar type of a thing?
Right.
But let's talk about Hoya de Nicaragua real quick. Where did that start? And then also, I think it's really important for people, and I think you do talk about this a lot, but in terms of these top 25 lists and things last year, there's really fewer factories that are performing as well with the consumers and the cigar, socialites and whatnot out there than cigars coming out of Hoya de Nicaragua. I mean, Steve Saka's cigars come out of there, and they're, greatly acclaimed. Nicholas Malillo's cigars are coming out of there, and they're wildly acclaimed as well. And your products, are equally as good and coming out of the same place where these cigars are being made. And I think it's important that people understand that this factory's making a lot of great cigars, and if you're into those other cigars, this is something for you. So where did that relationship begin, and how did that start?
Actually, it's a very interesting. I'm going to tell something I don't think I have ever said in any show, in any podcast. So I'm going to drop it right here because my boy Jonathan Carney's here, and we're gonna have this conversation. But it's actually very interesting. I obviously the first move I made, being Dominican, was go to the Dominican Republic. Right, I'm going to go to Santo Domingo, and I am going to talk to the very, very few people, one, that I've actually ever met and that I've actually been in his factory before, and that was Lito Gomez. I remember going to an event here at Old Virginia Tobacco, Seven Corners, where you guys obviously are a powerhouse and continue to be a powerhouse in this cigar shops in Northern Virginia. And I go there, and Lito is there with your predecessor, my good friend Andrew Brennan, who happened to be, they were having an event, and everybody was enjoying themselves and other stuff. And I had a chance to meet Lito because I had been smoking his cigars for years, right? So long story short, I had been in his factory. He's given me a personal tour. It was incredible. That was sort of Lito at his best, right? So I go over and I tell, I go to the Dominican Republic in 2012. At this point, I'm going to be honest, I don't think Lito was part of the Pro Cigar group at this point. The reason I remember this well is because I remember going to the Big Smoke that year. So I went to Pro Cigar in 2012 February, and I went to 2012 I went to the Big Smoke, and I remember having this conversation with one of the guys that was from Pro Cigar. I was like, why in the hell is Lito not part of Pro Cigar? Like, this is ridiculous. I just made a comment, like, just as a consumer, right? But at that point, I was already playing with the idea of, should I do a cigar? Should I not? How do I do the brand? Where do I do it? So I went to visit Lito for the second or third time, because I've already been in the factory at least two or three times. And I very gently asked, do you ever do cigars for other people, just out of curiosity? At this point, I'm still in the very early development stages. Do I want to get into manufacturing? Do I want to be a brand owner? Do I want to have a retail spot? Do I want to go into distribution? Because there's so many areas in this business that you actually can make money, and it doesn't have to be branding, right? So I met with him, and I remember my good friend Ruben Gonzalez from the Dominican Republic as well was there with me, and it was like, no, and I'm gonna tell you why. He was like, I wanna. It's the fun for me is to continue to do it, for me and my family, my children, to continue to have this. And I was like, man, I got mad respect for that. Like I completely understand what you do. And then after that, I got a call from Jose Blanco from Hoya de Nicaragua. And the reason I got a call from Jose Blanco, I'm telling you, man, things happen for a reason, was because my father is married to, the owner of a big Dominican chain of cars and dealerships and whatnot. And her daughter, Jose Blanco's daughter, worked as the general manager at the Santiago branch. And so my dad made a comment to his wife, oh, my son is here. He's looking into some tobacco stuff. And then all of a sudden she says, well, I got somebody that works for me in Santiago that I think your father is involved somehow in this industry. And lo and behold, right, it was Jose Blanco from La Aurora. And at that point, Jose Blanco was working out of Joya de Nicaragua. So Jose calls me and says, hey, my daughter asked me to give you a call. I'm like, I was like, oh, that was very nice of you. And then everything just literally started we started conversing there. And it was like, you need to come to Nicaragua. Nicaragua's on fire in terms of like the growth that they're having year by year. You need to pay attention to what's happening in the trend in the U.S. And I'm like, okay, let me take a look at that. So I went to Nicaragua. I met with Dr. Cuenca and Juan Ignacio, which are people that I respect at next levels. These people are passionate. These people love what they do. And I connected immediately with them. And so, I started my brands at Joya, and then all of a sudden, I was that kid that I couldn't tell because of Saka, by the way. And the people at Drew Estate, they were, I was prohibited to say that my product was being produced at Joya de Nicaragua because at that time, about a year in, they were working on the distribution and the new distribution of Joya de Nicaragua by Drew Estate. So, and I, smart by Steve and the team at Drew Estate, because, you're starting up a new distribution. All of a sudden, this kid comes along and, you're starting to do a brand. I was the only guy at Joya Nicaragua coming out with a cigar that was made exclusively for them. But there was a clause in our contracts that could not say where it was from, right? So, so about two and a half years into that process of battling in, it's like, where are your cigars being made? It's like, they're made in Esteli. Where? They're made in Esteli. It was a challenge, right? But I think we made pretty good headways, and now we're here, right? So, man, that was a long ass story, but something that I've never told before. So there you go.
No, it's a great story.
Great.
I was funny.
No, it's interesting how those situations come to light, and it's when you look at it. Obviously, what Joya de Nicaragua does now is different than what they were doing then, and really, you were one of the first ones there for that new concept that they're working on, and that's a great place to be at, and a great position to be in, and I said it seems to be the best decision for you. Now, I will ask, I've been one of the people from time to time that have you've really put everything into this. The FDA was a challenging situation, and it still is probably going to be, but not as challenging as it was. But you made a decision at probably the most challenging time of the FDA, because at the beginning you were doing this part-time and your other job at the same time. And right when the FDA got in the most challenging situation, you made the decision to go full-time at Cigars, where there was a wall sitting there. And I remember I was sitting with places, and it was always a great conversation. I said, I like Omar. I love the guy, man. Great personality. I really appreciate it. I'm like, is he crazy? And people that I would say were like, yeah, he's crazy. And I'm like, I really hope this works out. What brought you to make that decision at that period of time and to really roll those dice?
So, man, I've been called crazy after that decision more times than I care to imagine. But I literally was sitting at a table with Rocky Patel, Glenn Case, Glenn Loop. We were talking like it was at least 3, 4, 5 people, right? All industry people. And I told them this was literally as I was about to leave NASA, about 4 or 5 months before I left, and they were fighting, they were pushing. The regulation came down like in August, so these guys were going at it. And I'm like telling the guys, like, okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna go inside the industry as these regulations are hitting and all that stuff. And Rocky turned was like, don't fucking do this. Like, don't do this. And then Glenn Case was like, coño. Because he says a lot of coño. Coño, Omar, don't do it. And I'm like, I got to do it, man. I feel passionate. I love what I do. And then in retrospect, there was, would I change anything? Absolutely not. And I'm going to tell you why. Well, I'm going to tell you the regrets that I had. I'm going to tell you where I may have paused, right? And so by 2016, right, I already made a decision, primarily for two things. I was doing so good by 2015. My sales I was selling like $650,000 worth of cigars, man. And I'm like, with 2 brands, right? I got the Fratello Bianco, the Fratello Classico here, pedaling on the road, right? And I'm looking at these 2 brands, and I'm growing them, right? It's all basically on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? Because Thursday night, really, because I was working for NASA Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, about 12-hour days, so that I can have that Friday off so that I could do this, right? Sell cigars and connect. But, I was working 12 hours an hour, 90 some hours a week. I mean, I was killing myself, right? And I was tired of it. I was tired of doing both things. So that was a big, big driver. But the next one was there was something I knew about the government, Jonathan, that is just a reality of it. The government moves slow. And it's like this gigantic ball. We throw out shit, and I say we is because we're still there, right? But we throw out shit out on the road like something like this horrible regulation, which I happen to read every year of it, right? And try to understand it. And I knew there was just like lawsuits that were going to be filed left and right on something so abysmal and so, badly written that it was just going to take years, right? And so I said to myself, okay, what's the worst case scenario, right? I mean, I know there's going to be an impact on the road because people are going to be more afraid of the boutiques. People are going to have, are going to be much more adverse, and that heavily happened in 2016. But then all of a sudden, man, a guy that literally shops at Smokin Tabacco here in Washington, D.C., happens to be the reporter for the Washington Post. And he happened to be the guy that was, for lack of a better word, buying one of my cigars at a guy that was in the front desk, told him, can you believe this guy left NASA and, just start selling cigars full time? And he's like, really? Did he get fired? And he was like, not that I know of. And so all of a sudden I get this call from this reporter saying, the first thing they said is like, I'm a reporter for Washington Post and my name is such and such. And hey, I'm interested in knowing, did you get fired from NASA and decided to start your own business? And I was like, no. And wait, who the hell are you? And no, I didn't get fired. So then that started the whole conversation. We got that huge article in the Washington Post, man, and my business went up 48%. So it was like, holy shit, like I'm actually moving and shaking a whole bunch of stuff. This is really exciting. And so in retrospect, could I have left and kept that very nice, cushy salary through probably March of 2017? Probably yes, because in January, February, and March, I was selling the exact same amount of product that I was sold in 2016. And I'm like, holy shit, what did I do? I went in.
What did I do?
On this business, but I'm thinking I'm going to basically triple my business because now I can sell on a Monday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, on a Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, that was not the case. So it was a challenge, but it ended up working out for the good.
So, guys, I do want to, I don't mean to interrupt the flow, but we do need to get to our news segment. Our news segment is brought to you by McAuliffe Cigars. Our friends over at McAuliffe Cigars, if you are an ambassador, you know all about the fun of McAuliffe Cigars. If you're not, head over to McAuliffeCigars.com and join the ambassador program. So the news actually comes from McAuliffe Cigars this week as they announced their cigar journal that they will be releasing through their retailers later this year. It's a packet that they've put together and they've marketed towards new cigar smokers. It's kind of like a Cigar 101 kind of informational packet. Is a kind of a way to help newer cigar smokers. It's obviously it's good for, they have their ambassador program. I just mentioned, if there's ambassadors who are newer to cigars, it's something that can help them kind of learn more and kind of get more into the cigar world, the industry, what have you, or the cigar lifestyle. I think is probably a better term for them, which is great. It's something that, like I said, will be available at McAuliffe retailers. If your local brick and mortar doesn't carry McAuliffe cigars, you should get in there and tell them to, because they're fantastic. Side note, I've been smoking a lot of McDahlia lately. Good McAuliffe cigar. So I thought that was kind of appropriate for our news segment tonight.
Yeah, so it's called A Cigar Journal.
A Cigar Journal, yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cool concept, and it goes into like women in the the history of women in the cigar industry and women cigar smokers as well. And I know Amanda was a big driving force behind that. So it's a really cool concept, and they've had a lot of success with their passports. And I think this is going to be a really nice educational piece and drawing a different part of the market and really educate the ambassadors and new ambassadors that are out there, and it's going to be some good stuff. So I'm looking forward to jumping and checking one of them out myself. I think it's a cool concept, and as they've done with everything else in terms of their literature, it's been really well put together.
It is a great concept, I'd be interested to see if anyone else tries to kind of steal that idea, or the concept of it rather. McAuliffe is one of those brands I've been pretty impressed with. Obviously, we're friends of the brand, but they've done a lot of things especially in this past year that have been pretty unique. They have the ambassador program alone is a huge deal. By getting the consumers together and kind of putting them in their own little fan base that they are a part of themselves as a brand, rather than have them create their own and keep them engaged. And they do things like this to kind of keep that whole atmosphere of the ambassador tribe together, and to make it more inviting for newer cigar smokers or newer ambassadors or whatnot. So hats off to McAuliffe again. They've done a great job. They're doing great things. We're happy to be on this road with them. But getting back to Omar. So Omar, you have a nice growing brand. As I said, I've smoked Fratello before. They're good cigars. We talked a little bit about kind of the early history and beginnings of the brand. What are some of your long-term goals for the brand in terms of just where do you want to be? What's you talk about earlier, being a small brand and kind of how you have come to be, and you've seen people that you've looked up to kind of give you that kind of sense of acceptance, and you've continued to grow. Where do you want to be? I guess with this, in the long term, what are you trying to do with Fratello?
So that's a question I've debated many times how to approach it, because I started the business and as I was going through the motions and understanding it better and whatnot, it kept on feeling like I was, all I wanted to do was basically, complete industry takeover. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to have Fratello in every location, brick and mortar that specializes in premium cigars. I wanted to be, I remember early on, it's like, man, I wish I could be in like 30 shops. And then I was like, man, I really wish I can be in like 100 shops. And then I was like, oh my God, where does it end, right? We're in 800, doors right now where Fratello is being sold in the U.S. and over 42 states. And now it has become less about the numbers and more about the end goal. I want, and as I tell my children all the time, that one of the things that makes me most proud of is that they're walking around in a place and then all of a sudden they see someone smoking, and hopefully that cigar that they're smoking is a Fratello. Does that look like a million, 10 million cigars in a year, or 20 million, or 2 million, or 1 million, or 3 million? It doesn't. That's besides the fact for me. I want them to feel a level of satisfaction that when they see someone else smoking a cigar, that they not only think of me, but they also think and know that Fratello has an incredible presence in the U.S. So when it comes to numbers, and God knows I know all about that, it's becoming more apparent to me that it's obviously a business as well. It's do you rather be a $5 million a year in sales revenue company and making $1 million net, or you rather be 35 million a year in revenue, or 50 million a year in revenue, and have $600,000 a year net? You know what I mean? Which can very, very easily happen, right? I mean, we all know what numbers at the end look like, but the balance of the whole wheel has shifted into something more of pride. And obviously, if I search that goal, the numbers will come with it. And this is not me saying it. This is actually comes from a mentor of mine at NASA. When I came in, I told him all I wanted to do was just try through the ranks and just work really hard, man. If I work really hard, I'll be making it from a GS9, which makes about $41,000 a year, to a GS15, that makes $170,000 a year. Like, how do I want to get to those, those positions, rise up the ranks. The average age for somebody who's, GS15 is 55 years old at NASA. And so, that kind of stuff. It was, for me, it was a driver, right? To make the money, make the responsibilities. But he quickly put me into my place and said, if you continue to search just the dollars, you'll get there much slower than if you just focus on the work and just do great at that, and people will pay attention. He was like, I can guarantee you do great at your job and people will pay attention. And here I am at 24 years old. I'm getting into NASA, right? I'm like, okay, maybe this is this is a path that I should do, and I did. I was coming in, the earliest and leaving the latest, and I was, they call me the guy that is like, yeah, just dump it on Omar, because I would do it. I would just simply. You could, they keep. There was one thing that in the government they keep on punning off all the time. It's called the CFC. Sorry, CFC, but it's the Combined Federal, for Charitable Foundation, which is basically, a non-for-profit that works on utilizing government employee salaries and stuff like that to help them say, hey, here's a great cause that you can support, stuff like that. And that's the kind of stuff that usually gets pawned off from, GS9 and GS7 to GS9, GS7, and they just keep on punting it off. I was the one that was always doing it because I always said yes. But that allowed me to do to grow pretty fast in the agency. And so I'm all about, just when it comes to the cigar industry, I just want that. And if I can get that, I know everything will follow. So I don't get too tied up on numbers. I'm fine.
You're more focused just on the long-term vision and less on being that guy who's just all about, well, we just want to sell, 10 million cigars, 20 million cigars.
It's really interesting to say that, because obviously right now is a challenging time for the cigar industry as a whole. The demand, I've said this, congratulations to the consumers. You outsmoked the industry's ability to produce cigars. There's back orders and challenges getting product and things all around the place. And one of the big things that, you had that conversation with Lito at the beginning before you got into this, it's wild and crazy to people that we have a back order as big as it gets. And you can't get a back order if you're not selling product. And the industry and our company, every year that we've been in, it's grown for 27 years. We do make more cigars every year. Then you take a thing like COVID, and it's really challenging. It's a challenging conversation to have with someone where I'm not trying. You could sell 20 million cigars if you guys wanted to make them. It's not about that. It's about making a quality product, having it be consistent, and having it be something that you can manage and create a good lifestyle for yourself, and that the consumers and the retailers can sell and have confidence in selling it. So I always ask people, and Lito does this as well, with, hey, I can't get this cigar all the time. How do you feel about the quality of it? Well, it's consistent. It's a great cigar. It may not be your flavor profile, so there's something else for everybody. But there's never a quality issue. There's never, very rarely is there a problem with the manufacturing of the product. And I think it's a really commendable thing that you're doing, to not just be about that, because there are companies that are about that, big brands and brands that are very respectful, that we have a lot of respect for. For example, I'll bring one up. Like, if Rocky Patel could sell 200 million cigars, he would. That's just how it would work. That's not the goal for a company like that, and the success to be found in that way as well. So I commend you for that. And if anyone thinks it's nuts and crazy or whatever it is, trust me, it's a way to work, because you can't be the biggest guy, and what you got to do to be that is sell a little bit of the integrity of what you started with. So I really appreciate what you've been doing there, and you've always you've never outgrown you've never outgrown in the years I've known you. Where you at, and if you do, you scale it back, and I've really appreciated that.
Yeah. The other question I wanted to ask you was, at what point in your in your time, with Fratello, did you? Because you talked a little bit before about how in the beginning, you were like, and I'm sure this happens to a lot of people. You get to that point where you start to second guess yourself, like, oh shit, what did I get myself into? I left a whole career behind, especially a career like yours is kind of very structured and kind of well put together. Like you kind of knew where you were going there, more or less, and you kind of changed gears and you start this whole new life. And yeah, you have that moment where you're like, oh shit, did I just make a mistake? Like, is this gonna be like, is this really gonna happen? At what point did it really like hit you when you were like, you know what? Yeah, I made it. I'm good here. I think I'm gonna be all right. We're doing some serious shit.
Um, I hate to bring up that article again, but it did happen to drop 2 days before the trade show in 2017. Jonathan, you remember that year? I mean, it was the year after probably one of the most depressing trade shows in the history, right? Because everybody was like, "Oh shit!" Like FDA just hit. I mean, 2016 was like everybody was in rocky waters, right? And so 2017 was an unknown, right? It's like, what's going to happen? Are the big guys going to come out? Are they going to still buy the same? What's going to go? What's the situation? We're still going to have great attendance. And obviously, there was a lot of challenges and still a lot of question marks on that. But the reality is, I had a line at my booth, man. When people, some people just wanted to say hello and meet me. I'm like, I mean, the reach of a newspaper like the Washington Post, when they have never, and I mean never, have given a positive, or a positive view, I guess, onto something at a national scale level and worldwide. I mean, I had people coming in. I opened up 8 international. I mean, there's 8 people came in, flocking with gigantic orders from new Australian distributors, and then New Zealand came in, and then we're talking Germany came in, and then it was just on and on and on. I'm like, oh my god, like this is, I don't have enough tobacco for the for what was happening at the time. So that was pivotal. Sure. I mean, we knew something was coming with that, and it was already about a month, 2 months in, and so we were obviously prepping. I like to prep for the good, because the worst thing that can happen is I got more cigars that I can sell, right? And then I can just slowly sell those. What I knew I already had was a great brand and a great manufacturer behind Fratello that has always stood by us, which is at that time was Joya de Nicaragua and then newly La Aurora. So I created my first cigar in the Dominican Republic, and the first cigar factory that I thought of, obviously, was the one that, Fratello, that I personally smoked, the first cigar I smoked. And so it was personal. And so that was the moment where I was like, holy shit, man, this is going to be great. And God, we've continued to grow. We haven't decreased, and which is great, but it's there's always the challenges, right? I mean, Jonathan knows this better than anybody else when it comes to manpower, when it comes to scaling and choosing the right people and moving the right ships in the right locations, so that we can strategize about different areas. How do you divide and conquer? How do you manage a territory? And I respect what LaFleur did early on last year, which is to me, it was a smart move. It was an unfortunate move for a lot of people, but it was the right move. I mean, it's every single company knows what's going on for them and how to approach it. And so, from my point of view, I think it's every individual company out there making the best decisions for them, for their stakeholders, for their families. I know I would have, be in the exact same situation. And so it does come down to how did I see the future of Fratello, back then, and where do I see it now? And I think the future is bright. We've been coming in for, the biggest first quarter we've ever had, and so and we're hoping to continue to ride that wave.
So one last question I have before we get into our sports segment, and then kind of wrap up the show. In terms of Fratello and your brand and the cigars that you put out there, what do you think makes you guys unique? When someone comes into a shop and someone says, hey, you should try Fratello, what is it about Fratello that you think sets you apart from all the other brands on the shelf?
No, that's a really hard question, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I think the consumer now has so many incredible options. This is not the '90s, man, where people were just pumping out a whole bunch of crap and just calling it a day, and people felt that it was good stuff, right? I mean, we're talking now right now. There are so many great companies pumping out so many great cigars into their own way, right? Um, there's a saying that people buy from people, right? And so you and I, Nick, we met about 3 years ago at Two Guys Smoke Shop. You probably have heard of the brand, but you gave it a try. It was something that was unique because of probably the branding and the approach that I had took to hopefully get you to try the cigar. But it was more. It's more than just the cigar, right? I mean, it's the cigar is one thing. La Flor's producing great stuff. Drew Estate is producing great stuff. Joya Nicaragua, La Aurora, Tatuaje, My Father, Ilusión. All these guys are producing some really cool things. The aspect to me is about how do you continue to stay true to your brand, right, and stay true to who you are. You will never see me coming out with such an incredibly strong cigar that I personally enjoy and I probably won't push. I produce medium body blends. That's what I enjoy doing. I love a medium body cigar, something that's tasty, something that's balanced, something that plays off of the different tobaccos that we use. And I love using tobaccos from many different countries. But there are very few exceptions out there of people that are saying, oh, like triple ferment, do this, and quadruple fermentation, and then 50 years aging, 20 years aging, 5 years aging. All of these different things are to me nothing more than a great tagline, but the reality is we're all producing great stuff, and so it comes down to the story, I feel, and it comes down to the connection that somebody has to a brand because of their palate. Right? If your palate is into the medium body range, and you enjoy and love a medium body, full flavored cigar, that's going to be your choice because this is what we produce. I don't produce anything that it's incredibly mild. I don't produce anything that's incredibly strong. I love a medium body cigars. I produce cigars that I know I can smoke, and so I always do this little plug, but I point people to our amazing YouTube channel, Imperfect Pairings, which anybody that's watching, I'll check it out, Imperfect Pairings on YouTube. But it's where I basically give showcase a little bit about not just the product, but the experience of the product, right? Where you something so incredibly different, so incredibly unique. I paired oysters with cigars. I paired, Chacoli with cigars. I paired wines from Bordeaux. I paired Mama Juana with cigars. So all of these different things obviously play a role. To me, it's about the experience, as it is to the consumer as well. And if consumers are out there and they enjoy a solid, incredibly well-made, premium, medium-body blend, this is what we are.
Well said. Well said. I want to. Sorry, I thought John was going to say something, but I think it was just an echo. I want to hit our sports segment really quickly, and I'm sure John's going to have plenty to say. Our sports segment is brought to you by Nova Cigar. Platinum Nova, make Nova big. If you head over to novacigar.com, you can use our discount code SMKTAB15 to save 15% off of your next order. That's SMKTAB15 at novacigar.com. So, John,
I missed last week, so I got plenty to do.
Oh, I know. I'm just gonna let you take it away.
So, last week, NFL free agency started. If anybody thinks people aren't watching the NFL or protesting the NFL, there may be agreements or disagreements you have with certain ways they've handled things over the years, as I do in certain circumstances. However, the NFL just signed their largest television deal. It involved media of all types, social media, online, Amazon streaming, you name it. Everything was involved in it. But the biggest thing that happened is the Patriots came out hurling money all over the place. And there's one thing I want to talk about. I won't get into the free agents, but for everyone that knows, I'm a huge Cam Newton fan. massive Cam Newton fan. I thought he got a raw appraisal in the public eye last year. Really unique year with the COVID. He was out with COVID. He had no preseason. And I think he did a pretty decent job with a team that was really trash last year, missing a lot of players. The offensive line was terrible. They have no tight ends. The tight ends refused to block. So I think one of the most important decisions the Patriots made this offseason, and people will argue about it, I've watched it online, was bringing back Cam Newton. And the reason I say that is last year wasn't a great opportunity to look and see what he had to offer. The team is terrible. People say he can't complete a pass. They forget that he threw for over 400 yards in the game right before he got COVID and missed 2.5 to 3 weeks. So the guy can still throw a football. He's still one of the greatest athletes that's played the game. He's an absolute beast. And the thing that's really unique about that signing was we had to give up, as the Patriots had to give up nothing for Cam Newton. Nothing. So they got to sign this player. All it did is cost them some money, and it was a really friendly contract. And they didn't have to give up anything to get him. So there's other quarterbacks that were free agents in the offseason. To get those, not free agents, sorry, that were looking for trades, to get those players would have required trading draft picks or giving away things other than just money. And the thing by securing Cam Newton is, one, you're going to give him a shot with with the preseason. So he's going to get a real fair shot at learning the system, working with the players, and I think it's going to pan out well for him. And worst case scenario, the Patriots have all those draft picks that they can trade up for and get a extended quarterback or a situation where a player for the future. Cam's 32 years old. He's still got gas in the tank. But in the reality of the situation, he's not going to be a 4 or 5 year contract signed there. He's not going to be a franchise player for 10 years type of a thing. You know, he's in the second half of his career. But I thought the Cam Newton signing out of all of them, besides the two tight ends they signed, the tight ends has been the biggest issue with the Patriots for the last 3 seasons. The guys that they had last year refused to block. They sucked. They were awful. They couldn't catch footballs. Those two tight ends are really huge, but I think the most important signing was that Cam Newton at quarterback. He's a likable player. All the players on the team really rallied around him. He's a good leader. He dresses wild and does a lot of crazy stuff, but in terms of his clothing. But he's a really good guy, and there's nothing negative about him as a player. So to sign him and have a player and a leader of that caliber, and with giving nothing away, it was a really unique signing. And I think that was probably the most pivotal signing in terms of the future structure of that team. And I really like what happened in free agency last week. I would have liked to see a higher tier wide receiver. I think that the value of wide receivers in NFL free agency was greatly over exaggerated this year. I think they got two real good receivers. And they're definitely an upgrade from where it was at last year. But I do think they overpaid slightly in that position. But everywhere else was great. The offensive line, keep getting Ted Karras back. Andrews staying. It's just going to be a really unique year, and I think there's nobody that splashed harder in free agent than the Patriots and kind of restocked where they're at. And it'll be interesting because we're only a week and a half into this, so there's still a lot of stuff happening, a lot of moves, and things will change a little bit more in the NFL draft. But in terms of drafting the future quarterback, signing Cam Newton was the biggest part of being able to do that because they had to give nothing up for the guy. And the upside with him is huge, for at least for this season. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, it was a big week last week, and that was one of the main reasons I was upset I wasn't able to be on the show last week because I had so much to talk about with that.
Do you feel better now? You're going to be able to get it out of your system?
Well, so good, man. Last week was great. It was the most entertainment I've had in the last 16 months with anything in the offseason to do with the Patriots. Because last year, remember, during free agency is when Tom Brady left, so that was like having a funeral. Yeah. So we went from having a funeral to like celebrating a birth. It was kind of like we had like a gender reveal or something. You know what I mean? Where the Patriots were like, "Oh, here we go. This is what we're getting." So,
some of the other quick highlights I'll hit really quick. Spring training with Major League Baseball is wrapping up soon. The MLB season will be starting on time for once, as we didn't really have a good baseball season last year. Also, as you know, John and I watch NASCAR, and this weekend is the return to the dirt track. NASCAR will race on dirt at Bristol Motor Speedway in Tennessee this weekend. I'm excited to watch that whole.
It's gonna be awesome.
It's either gonna be a shit show and it's gonna be a mess because it's just such a different format for them, or it's gonna go really well, and it's gonna be a good race to watch, and we're gonna want more. So
Well,
it can only go either way. I mean, and I think
did you see the fight? Did you see the fight this last weekend in the
the Xfinity series?
what's the Xfinity series?
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
There was so much crazy stuff that happened in the Xfinity series. I mean, you had cars doing spin outs to get back into their pit road lane. You had people running into each other, backing into each other to get angry at each other in the pit road. You had physical fistfights at the end of the match. At the end of the match.
Let's not
I
forget.
said match.
This is all with
Dude,
two drivers.
It was awesome. Yeah, I know. But that, like, talk about the excitement. You know what I mean? Like, if that stuff was going on every week, like, that's why for me the dirt track's going to be awesome, because it's either going to be great or it's going to be a shit show, and either way, it's a win. It's going to be an absolute freaking mess, and it's going to be great, and that's what people want to see. If people, I was reading a comment online. It was like, if every week I knew people were going to get a fist fight at the end of the Xfinity race, because I'd watch it literally every week because it was really entertaining. There's just a lot of crap going on, and there was people trying to be holier than thou. Or like, oh, well, they're messing with cars. They could have hurt somebody. Nobody was going to get hurt. This wasn't Tony Stewart accidentally running somebody over, who, by the way, was standing in the middle of the road years back, not to bring something back up. That's that person's fault. They shouldn't be in the road.
Well, that's a
These
whole
were
other
people in
conversation for debate.
Yeah, but these were people in their cars. It's safe. It wasn't an issue. Nobody was getting hurt. Nobody was running anybody down. It was just good old-fashioned bumper cars in pit road, and then fist fights at the end. It was great.
I know. It's
Everybody loves a good fight. I mean, at the end of the day, man, it gets it. It's the adrenaline. It's what gets it. It gets to you.
Are you a sports guy, Omar? What do you follow?
Oh God, I love baseball. I'm a baseball guy. Obviously, I grew up with baseball and basketball. Those are my sports. Not so much into I'm a Redskins fan, and I say that like looking at my looking down. I'm a Redskins fan, the Washington football team now. But nah, man. I mean, I'm a big time. I'm a Mets fan, and I'm a Laker fan. Not like a new Laker fan, like the old school, Irvin Magic Johnson fan. But enjoy sports a lot.
Well, another big one, since we're talking basketball, the Celtics are in complete disarray. They got a ton of young talent. They can't seem to figure that out. But at the end of the day, they're at 500, so it could either go any direction. The biggest news in the NBA right now is LeBron James' high ankle sprain and Anthony Davis being out.
And on a side note, I guess, because it's sports related, it also about LeBron James. It was announced that LeBron James is now a part owner of the Boston Red Sox, which I think is great. You have people who are like, well, it's a business decision. I get that. I get business in any aspect is business. People want to make money. I get it. Everyone wants to make money. But it's just so random that LeBron James has ownership.
It was. Well, you know what? You know what's unique about it is it's the Fenway Sports Group, right?
Yeah. And
so technically your father's boss is LeBron James.
Indirectly, yeah.
Yeah. When you're there, hopefully get back there, you'll work for LeBron. But it's one of the top 5 largest sports ownerships group conglomerates in the world. I mean, it's huge. They got football in Europe. They own tons of stuff. And it's massive.
Red Sox?
And,
the Fenway Sports Group. Yeah, so they own the Boston Red Sox,
and
the Liverpool Football Club, Roush Fenway Racing, and NASCAR.
It's just big stuff, so it's not unsurprising they would take on another investor, and I think it's big for him. And again, I like LeBron James. I think he's generally misunderstood. People compare him to Jordan a lot. I think he's accomplished things that Jordan hasn't. But Jordan, in my opinion, Jordan accomplished things that LeBron never will. But you look at a guy like LeBron. I mean, he was born. He worked his butt off. First of all, everything he had, he's earned. People are like, oh, he's born with that physique. You're born with that physique, but to maintain that over that period of time and to maintain that body. I mean, you being a big guy, you get it. I mean, LeBron's your height.
Beyond, man, it's beyond. This guy, people have no appreciation for what a beast this man it is at this point. Just pay attention to how old this guy is right now and the level of push he can still have to go up in the air, grab a basketball, take it down to the net, do a fadeaway jump. I mean, this guy with his knees, any other human being, and people usually slow down. They just do. All great players, after they pass 30, they just slow down, and because they want longevity. Nobody ever wants to just say, oh, you know what? I'm 30 years old, I'm gonna stop playing. No, they want to keep on going. They want to keep on playing. Yeah. But it takes a toll to keep on jumping up and down. Did this guy have an injury now? I mean, it was just meant. I mean, it's just
And he's a legit 6'8". He's real 6'8". If you look at him on the court, you watch people be around like Kevin Durant. They have him listed like 7 feet, right? When he stands next to LeBron James, he's maybe a half an inch taller than that guy. Yeah. LeBron is huge. He's on the higher end of 6'8", probably 6'9". And he's 275 pounds. He's just massive. And the challenge, and I think why he's so, why he gets a lot of flack is we get to hear his opinions all the time. Mm-hmm. And, he has Twitter. He has this. If Michael Jordan, I think he might even have said this in an interview, if Michael Jordan had Twitter, Instagram, and the way media was consumed at that time, if it was like it is now, I mean, we would have had a very different view on Michael Jordan, too. I think it would have been much more polarized. I think LeBron's very polarized because we really get to hear his opinion on everything, and we get to hear it immediately. And that opinion may change. It may just be what he says in the moment. So I think he gets polarized for that. But we're watching something great with him, and it's too bad to have him out there. As a Celtics fan, I don't want to see them pass them in championships this year. And with that high ankle sprain, it's going to take the man a little bit of time to get back. And
all right.
Davis is in shape, too. We'll see what happens. But, a lot happened in basketball this past week, and trade deadline's coming up. So we'll see what happens there with some moves on next week's show.
Absolutely. So I think that's going to wrap up the sports corner for us tonight. But, sorry, I think my microphone was a little too far away. I accidentally inhaled, so I do a little bit of a coughing spout. I'm not even.
You were not smoking Fratello either, so there you go.
Yeah, see?
That's what you get.
That's what I get. That's what I get. It's just like that's what John says to me when I don't smoke LFD. He's like, well, I mean, that's your own fault. You're smoking the wrong cigar.
Oh, your cigar didn't burn well? Not my fault.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've texted him. And it's all in good fun. So before anyone gets all butthurt, this is all in good fun. But I'll text John, and I'll be like, hey, by the way, I'm smoking, an Andalusian Bull, or I'm smoking, a 700 Maduro. Oh, it just cracked on me and fell apart. I'd like to make a complaint. And he'll be like, too fucking bad. And I'll be like, oh, okay, thanks.
I'm like, yeah, you're smoking upstairs with a window open. It's 35 degrees. That all bets are off.
So on that event that I had, and we can wrap it up on that, but on that event that I had when Lito was there, I bought one of the Salomons that I just got in a super high rate. It was like 93, 94 and aficionado that year. And in the cigar, and I cut it well. Everything was fine. It just started unraveling a little bit, and I see Andrew Brennan, which is a balls buster, and you know him very well. And I tell him, it's like, hey man, what's going on? What's happening? He's like, is it smoking good? It's like, yes, actually, it's got a lot of flavor. Keep on smoking it. I've been lying quite a few times.
So have I. Andrew was the one that got me into the business, so. I got a few Andrew Brennan-isms that I use from time to time, so I definitely got those.
So
absolutely.
We are getting towards the end of the show. We're going to wrap it up. I just want to say, as a little reminder, we're still running our fundraiser for the Cigar Family Charitable Foundation. All proceeds from our online store from now through April 30th will go towards CFCF. There's some really cool stuff on there. We've made some things with some exclusive designs, for the charity, but all the stuff, it all counts. All of the mugs, the hats, everything that we have, it all counts. And you can find it at smokintabacco.com/store. And you also, for every item you order, you get entered into our special raffle. We're trying to finalize that list this week for stuff that we're going to raffle off. There's going to be some cigars, some ashtrays. There's going to be some bourbon, possibly some other swag kind of stuff. We're also opening up. I don't know if it's live yet, and I don't have Nicole next to me to ask, but I will have to circle back to that later when I can talk to her. But we had talked about we are setting up a raffle ticket purchase option for $5 a ticket. For those who maybe just want to be part of that but still want to donate to the cause, you can go on there and you can buy as many raffle tickets as you want, and you can donate to the cause that way, and you can still get part of the raffle that'll be happening on the end after April 30th when the fundraiser is closed, and we'll pick the winners. Omar, thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Appreciate the time. It was a fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we sign off, I always throw the spotlight to the guests for them to say anything they'd like. So the floor is yours.
No, I'm just thankful you guys got a chance to invite me, and we finally made it in, and I got mad respect for Jonathan, so I'm glad to have seen him in the show, and also for what you guys have been doing with Smokin Tabacco. It's a great cause, and so keep up the great work, and follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, and at Fratello Cigars, and make sure to smoke a Fratello one, of your pleasure and of your leisure.
They are good cigars, and I will vouch for them. I've had them. They are good cigars. It's a great brand, and you should check that out, and check your local brick and mortar. If they don't have it, find a retailer online. There's a lot of good ones out there, but there's plenty of chances for you to get your hands on some Fratello. So definitely take advantage of that. John, anything you want to say before we sign off?
We're on a 2-week break at Hacking Gourmet because we go the 2nd and 4th Monday of every month. So we'll be back live on Hacking Gourmet on April 12th for our April Easter edition. Essentially, it'll be after Easter, but we'll be doing some Easter stuff with that. I'm also taking the month of April off for gourmet smoke sessions. We're taking April off so we can get caught up. I'm in production a little bit on some things. I'm waiting until we get caught up on that. So our next gourmet smoke session will be on May Day, May 1st. And then after that, you guys will be in Miami. So we got a chock full next 5 weeks here at Smokin Tabacco. We'll be back next Wednesday. You said we got Pete Johnson next week, right?
Yes.
So we'll be back with Pete Johnson. He's a fellow Mainer, so I'm looking forward to talking about some Maine things with him. And I got a cigar lined up to pull out for that. And then April hits, and it's kind of it's gonna be a busy spring. So April getting set up, going to be busy in May. 2 Hacking Gourmet shows in April. No gourmet smoke sessions, but we'll be back here on Wednesday.
Absolutely. We're excited for it. Guys, thank you for watching as always. Like and subscribe, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all those fun places. And as John said, and as I said before, next week we will be with Pete Johnson from Tatuaje. So stay tuned for that. We will see you guys next week. Take care, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Omar.